So, if one of my students was in a bad relationship or was making poor choices, I would tell that person, dump that person, stop making those bad choices. Why? Because I care about you and I care about your writing. So these are the 11 words you should stop using, aka stop the madness. Let's go. So the first three words you want to stop using altogether in your writing are I, me, and my. One, two, three. And if you want to be a little cute in your notes, try little stop signs and put one. I, me, and my. I think, I believe, it seems to me, in my opinion. Oh, we love to use in my opinion, don't we? In my experience, I've learned that I believe the author intends, or you could say the author intends. Since we know what you think, we know you think the author intends. I believe kind of thinks you're not really sure about what you want to say. It seems to me also sounds like you're not sure. And in your writing, you want to be sure. I think definitely makes you sound unstable and not confident in your opinion. And in my experience, I've learned that that's just a lot of fluff. We don't really want to know. And then I believe the author intends, that's using double method. You believe it, you should know it. And by saying the author intends, you know that for sure. So, we and us, those are those tricky kind of words. And that's why I give them a yellow light, because depending on how you use it in the way that you're writing, we and us can kind of be okay. However, you do want to avoid it if possible. Only use it sometimes. I typically have a rule of thumb once per essay. For example, we are all wise to remember and then give some kind of great quote. So, I, me, and my are the first three words you should avoid using. But remember, we and us, avoid if possible. But if you got to use it, once per essay max. 4 and 5. By the end of this story, you discover the story shifts your perspective. So you want to avoid second person pronouns like you and like your. Now, because you don't want it to directly address the reader, you just want to give it to the reader plainly. And you can't do that if you're directly addressing the reader. Also, using you and your are way too casual. You and your in a formal paper makes the reader sound young and weak. You're not young and weak. So you want to avoid this altogether. So you want to stick with third person pronouns or antecedents. For example, they, readers, people, individual, the audience, the author. You want to stick with third person so that you don't sound young and weak. You sound highly intelligent and academic. So, 1, I. 2, me. 3, I believe was my. So 1, 2, and 3, I, me, and my. 4 and 5, you and your. Number 6. Number 6, would and could. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Now, you want to look at some examples. If the narrator would have shown more bravery than he could have, or one of the possible messages that the reader could discover. So the first thing we want to do is we don't want to talk about what could have happened or what would have happened if this would have happened. We know what happened. The author wrote it. Now, one of the possible messages. The author knows the messages. So the author has different messages. So you don't say one of the many messages that the reader could discover. We know there's many messages. Just tell us the message you want us to focus on, aka the reader discovers. So don't give us trips to Fantasyland. Don't discuss what happened in the alternate universe. In the written response, I want you to analyze what actually happened in the story. And then avoid filler language. Like the second sentence in red. What are the many possible messages that the reader could discover? You're just trying to fill me with words. That's that tactic where you have a word count. I give you a word count, 550. So you give me all these filler languages that I don't really need. I just want you to analyze what happened and tell me, aka the reader discovers. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hey, we're almost done. 8. Should. Holden should have realized. To fix this situation, Holden should. Ugh, you sound like a know-it-all. And no one likes a know-it-all. So should makes you sound a little preachy. Makes you sound a little judgy. And we don't want to be preachy or judgy in our writing. So, and we don't want to try to use needs to instead of should. Even though it's not should, still sounds a little preachy. Still sounds a little judgy. Has that preachy, judgy tone. And we don't like that at all. Sometimes you can use must, but do so carefully. So kind of treat it like we and us. If you're going to use it, be careful and only one time per essay. For example, the reader must remember that. From there, I don't feel you sound too preachy. But if you kept using must, then I might start having a problem with your writing and I might stop reading it. Number 9 and 10. May, might. Wimpy, wimpy, wimpy. You are not wimps. Don't use these words. Both of these words bring on an unpleasant uncertainty to your voice. And in your voice as a writer, the first thing you don't want to have is you don't want to have uncertainty. You want to be certain. And you don't want to be unpleasant. You want to be pleasant. You are trying to convince the reader that your point of view or your analysis is accurate and correct. And you can't do that being unpleasant, uncertain, and wimpy. Now, both of these words are wishy-washy. And in your writing, you don't want to be wishy-washy. Be bold. Don't be aggressive, but be bold, almost like aggressiveness. However, there are exceptions. Might, as a noun form, is fine. We're just talking about verbs here. So he swung with all his might. That means he gave it all his strength. But might as a verb, he might swing with all his strength. See how that sounds a little wimpy? So it may be the author believes. It makes you sound uncertain. And automatically in my head, well, is it or isn't it? Or the author might be trying to say, you've read the text. You know what the author is saying. Just tell me the author is saying. Or even better, hey, the author declares. We're going to talk about power verbs later. I'm going to give you about 10 to 11 power verbs that can completely enhance your writing. And the last word, how. Don't be lazy. Do the work. So don't tell me the author shows how it is to lose a spouse. Tell me how it is. Give me that good image creating words and descriptions and similes and metaphors that show me how it is to lose a spouse. Don't be lazy. Do the work. How is what you usually put in place of the actual writing or the precise expression. So you don't want to use that. And you don't want to ask me, the reader, to do your job. As the reader, my job is to do one thing, read your analysis and come to my conclusion. If you don't do your job, I can't do my job. And then therefore, why should I do the job that I signed you to do when I want you to do it and I can read it? So see, I want you to do your job, your writer's job, which is to respond properly to a prompt or analyze a text. And I shouldn't have to fill in mental blanks. The author shows how it is to lose a spouse. How is it to lose a spouse? Now I'm completely caught off guard and have completely neglected your text. Try this instead. The author shows the gut-churning misery created by the death of a spouse. Ooh, I felt that. The narrator explains how it feels to be a teen. Or the narrator helps the reader feel the fear and uncertainty that fogged the typical teen's mind. That's how it feels to be a teen. Tell me that. Don't just explain it. Don't be lazy. Do the work. All right. So a lot of you didn't know what kind of writer you were. A lot of you just be coming into your writing. So in these short little videos, I'm going to give you different steps, how-tos, do's, and don'ts. The first thing I want to do is definitely show you these 11 words you should not use anymore in your writing, aka stop the madness. All right, check you next time. Peace.